The TV static. By midnight, the house was silent. But the television had other plans. The whispering static. Jake had never believed in ghosts. He laughed at horror movies, dismissed urban legends, and rolled his eyes whenever his friends told him about paranormal experiences. But on that cold October night, he learned that some things cannot be explained. It started with a simple flicker. He had just settled into his couch, scrolling mindlessly on his phone, when the TV screen glowed with a brief static flash. He frowned. That's weird. The cable had been acting up all week, but this time it was different. The screen didn't return to its usual channel, it remained frozen in static. White noise crackling through the speakers. Annoyed, Jake grabbed the remote and pressed the power button. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Still nothing. Sighing, he got up and walked toward the TV, planning to unplug it. As he reached for the cord, a voice whispered through the static. "Turn around." Jake's breath caught in his throat. He spun around instantly, but the living room was empty. The only sound was the low hum of the television. His pulse quickened. He tried to convince himself that he had imagined it. Then the voice spoke again. "Turn around, Jake." His stomach clenched. This time it wasn't just a whisper. It was clear. It knew his name. The face in the screen. For a moment he stood frozen, his mind racing. How? His door was locked. He lived alone. No one could have spoken to him. A cold chill crept up his spine. Slowly he turned back to the TV. The static continued to crackle, but in the chaos of black and white noise, something shifted. A shadowy figure began to take form. It wasn't just a shape. It was a face. Jake's heart pounded as he stared at the screen. The face was distorted, its features stretching and twisting within the static. It had hollow, sunken eyes and a wide, unnatural grin. And worst of all, it was looking directly at him. His hands trembled as he reached for the remote again, frantically pressing buttons. The screen flickered but did not turn off. The static voice returned, now layered with a low, guttural growl. "Let me in." Panic surged through Jake's veins. He yanked the power cord from the wall. Darkness. Silence. The TV finally went black. He let out a shaky breath, stepping back. That didn't just happen. That was just my mind playing tricks on me. But then, a reflection appeared on the dark TV screen. Someone was standing behind him. The shadow behind him. Jake's breath hitched. His entire body tensed as he turned around, expecting to see a person standing there. But there was nothing. The living room was exactly as it should be, dimly lit, empty and still. His pulse thundered in his ears as he turned back to the TV screen. His reflection remained, but this time he wasn't alone. A dark figure loomed behind him in the reflection. Jake spun around again. Nothing. His hands clenched into fists, his mind struggling to process what was happening. Am I going insane? He rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the creeping dread. But when he looked at the TV again, the shadow was closer, and it was smiling. That was enough. Jake grabbed his car keys, planning to leave his apartment for the night. But the moment he reached the door, he heard it. A soft tick, tick, tick coming from the TV. Against his better judgment, he turned to look. The TV was unplugged, but it had turned back on. The haunting begins. The static was louder now, filling the entire room with its deafening hum, and within the screen, the face was clearer. It wasn't just a shadow anymore, it was a man. A pale, gaunt man with black, hollow eyes. Jake's throat tightened. "I see you," the voice whispered through the speakers. The lights in the apartment flickered violently. The temperature plummeted, and a heavy presence settled over the room. The air itself felt thick, pressing against Jake's chest. Then the TV screen started bleeding. Dark, inky liquid seeped from the screen's edges, dripping onto the TV stand. The smell of iron filled the air. Jake stumbled back, his stomach twisting in horror. The figure in the TV twitched, its head jerking unnaturally. "Don't leave," it hissed. Jake didn't listen. He bolted for the door. His hands fumbled with the lock, twisting and yanking the handle. But the door wouldn't budge. Behind him, the static rose into an ear-splitting shriek, and then everything went black. Trapped in the static. Jake woke up on the floor, his head throbbed, his vision blurry. He groaned, pushing himself up. The apartment was silent again. But something was wrong. The walls. They looked fuzzy. The furniture. Distorted, like it wasn't entirely real. Then he saw the TV. It was no longer displaying static. Instead, it showed his apartment, his own living room, empty. And then, he saw himself. He was inside the TV. Panic slammed into him. He rushed to the screen, pressing his hands against it. On the other side, the other Jake, the one in the apartment, stood up and turned around. It was the shadow. The creature that had been inside the static had taken his place. It turned to the TV and grinned at him. Jake screamed, pounding on the glass. "Let me out! Let me out!" The shadow merely tilted its head, then it picked up the remote and turned the TV off. Darkness swallowed Jake whole. The new resident. The next day, Jake's friends came by after not hearing from him. They knocked, called his phone. No answer. When they finally broke into his apartment, they found everything as it should be. No sign of struggle, no sign of Jake, just a TV sitting in the corner, silently playing static. And if someone looked closely enough, they could see a pair of terrified eyes staring out from inside the screen. The end.